Well, hello everyone, and I hope you've been having a wonderful spooky month so far. Granted, we're still early into it, but it seems the devs are getting into the spirit, which is good to see. We've got, it was called a skeleton stream, I think it was, something like that. But it looks like a decomp animation, so for the sake of me not going insane, I'm just gonna call it Decomposition throughout this thing, and the title's probably gonna say the same thing, who knows. Because, let's be honest, it looks like a decomposition thing. Like, the way everything's being done right here, and everything. Yeah, it's a skeleton, but it looks like really cool decomp, so that's what I'm gonna call it, okay? Okay, let's go. So, as with usual on Bryan's streams, for one, I'm late. He announced it, I think it was an hour again before I was able to see it. I wasn't in the area at the time, and by the time I was able to check Discord and saw the alert, it was like an hour later or something like that. So I imagine I missed the setup for the Utah and some other basic bits for the Utah, but at least we got to see the ending of it. So, I mean, it works out. And we do get to see this setup in preparation for Deinosuchus, so I imagine it was somewhat similar. But anyhow, this was sped up, I think all of it's ×4, except for one portion with Utah, I'm pretty sure it was, and I think it was 2 for Deinosuchus. So you'll see one portion where he'll, the eye will come back, and you'll see the skin come back and recede sort of thing, you know, like the full body versus the desiccated, shriveled corpse of a Utah, and Deinosuchus later. So I wanted that one to play in full without the ×4 speed up, and it still played really fast, so it's not like it's a big deal or anything, it's not taking time away or whatever. But he only does it a little bit with Utah. You could see it much better on Deinosuchus, and he probably did it a lot more earlier, and I couldn't have recorded it because I wasn't there. But yeah, I found that pretty neat. The rest, after that, he idled for a really long time on the lying on the floor Utah you saw there. And then eventually he started getting the files and stuff up for Deinosuchus. I wanted to show the setup. There wasn't a whole lot going on for a little while, but I figured it was interesting to see, you know, he lined up like the top portion alongside a skeletal diagram thingy-majiggy of a Deinosuchus skeleton. And I found it pretty interesting that he lined those up. I mean, it's really cool to see how he references it as he's working and all that stuff. I haven't seen any of this sort of stuff before, and you can tell because it's like, wow, amazing! They do that! Like, I know artists reference all the time, but seeing it this way, where it's like right on top of it, and as he clicks on each bone, it looks like it highlights on the drawing itself. It was just really neat. I found that pretty cool. And I know my computer would have absolutely had a heart attack if I were to attempt anything like that, so I cannot imagine how powerful his computer is to be able to run something like that, where there's like 2 models at the same time and all this other stuff going on. But anyway, there's not a whole lot to say otherwise. Like, he was messing with how I assume again, decomp works within the game, and I imagine it'll be, you know, when the corpse is fresh, it'll just, you know, ragdoll as usual, and then it'll slowly desiccate. Well, I say slowly, but one can only guess how fast it'll be in the game itself. Considering how fast you get hungry in the game, I don't know how decomp's gonna work. I imagine it's probably gonna be pretty quick. So yeah, I say slowly, but we all know it's probably going to be very, very fast. However, it was still interesting to see the makings of this sort of thing, because, I mean, yeah, it looks neat. It looks pretty cool, like the way how he has to line up all the bones and stuff, and then he pushes pushes the model around, and it's really cool. I mean, it's probably super basic for people who know this sort of stuff, you know, like modeling and all that. But to the layman TM, I'm not very familiar with it, and yeah, I know, like, with art stuff, warping things and tugging and moving things is pretty basic, but getting it to look nice and not all just like blocky and clipped together, and I mean we've all seen those bad animations in games where like when something moves its body around it looks like it's clipping, like a leg clipping through the body as it walks and stuff like that. I mean something like that. Getting it to look nice instead of just a wrinkled, shriveled model, and you can tell it's a wrinkled and shriveled model. And of course we know it's a wrinkled, shriveled up model, but you know, for the sake of immersion you want it to look not so obviously, you know, plastic, I guess is the word I'm probably looking for, like a toy. There's some games, especially some of the recent dinosaur games, I won't name names, that look plasticky, toy-like, that sort of thing, and that's part of why I never got into those ones, because I don't like the plasticky, toy-like look, and this is coming from someone who plays a Dead by Daylight like it was originally a rip-off, and it looks like Coraline dolls, so I'm not looking for that in a friggin' dinosaur game, I'm looking for that in other games with handsome dudes and other stuff. Anyway, so yeah, we just don't want it to look icky and stupid. I guess stupid would have been just a better basic, right to the throat term. We don't want it to look stupid. And so far, at least to me, it looks pretty nice. I mean, again, this is the basic form. I imagine it's gonna be all grisly and icky and all that fun stuff in the game itself. But even as it is now, I quite like the look of it, so I'm happy, at least thus far. And I'm curious to see what it'll look like when it's all finished up. Especially, you know, I wonder when it comes to things with feathers later on if those will go a certain way as well, because the way the Isle did their feathers, they're modeled in with the model itself, so it's like a solid thing instead of like a particle sort of. I guess I should say like Ark, where in Ark the model is, you know, there's the solid model and then the feathers or whatever add-on bits they have or textures. This is like if you see a Deinosuchus or whatever load in at 2 frames a second, it'll look pretty funky as everything's starting to load in, like that. And when they get injured, like an Argent gets injured, the wing feathers start to sort of tear and decay and stuff like that. With this, it's gonna be a little bit difficult. Well, I shouldn't say difficult, because it's not gonna be difficult so much as it's gonna be a little different thing. Because it's easier to do something like a tearing, feathery thing on a texture than it would be on the model itself. Like the tail feathers, like on a Hipsy, for example, easy to treat it similarly to, you know, a texture, in theory, not in practice. But the body that one's gonna be a little funky. So I'm curious to see what those are gonna end up looking like. Because again, they're carved right in, so it's, yeah, it's gonna be kind of interesting. So I'm curious to see. Like, maybe they'll just smooth it out, like here, there's smoothing and roughing up and all that. But, yeah, so I'm curious to see what the feathered things will end up looking like. But anyway, as I was doing final thoughts, nice stream, what little I saw of it. Well, I say little, I only missed about an hour, but that's still like missing half of it, so anyway, it was nice. As far as animation goes, I mean, there wasn't really a whole lot of animation, but it was a lot of model work sort of thing, and to me that's pretty interesting. It's a lot of visual stuff to look at. So even if it's not active moving sort of thing, it's still interesting, at least to me, to watch how it's all done. So hopefully it's more or less the same for you guys and you'll be able to enjoy this as well. So yeah, good stream. Just not a whole lot to talk about, because I've already been over that at least one other time. It's like those essays where you've got to have a word limit, and so you keep on either repeating points or making them so much longer than they have to be, sort of thing. And that's not my intent, but unfortunately that's just what ends up happening. I don't script these, because if I were to do a script it'd come out even worse than it already does. And I don't want to deal with having to do that either, so yeah, we're not gonna even go near that. I've never done well with scripts. I had to take speech as one of my classes way back in, I think it was high school. And oh my gosh, speech class was annoying because you have to, your teacher gets the script that you use, and so if you deviated from it, you got docked. And when you're trying not, at least for me, when I try not to deviate from things, I have to have it up on the screen, and so as I'm reading it, my eyes move faster than my mouth does. And so I'll end up tripping over words even more than I already trip over them, and it just gets annoying and messy, and I've never been the type to be able to do stuff like that. The more I plan for something, the worse it comes out, I should say. I've gotten back into writing again as of late when I have free time and when I'm not too brain dead to do anything. And back when I was in school, I was always supposed to do outlines, and I was never very good at those. Like, they sucked, because it felt like you're limiting yourself, and if you go out of that limit, because again, the teacher gets what your outline was, so if you deviate from it, you'd sometimes get docked, and anyway. So for me, and you were also supposed to do like a first draft and a second draft sort of thing, like is standard. And I'm the same way in art, now that I think of it. But anyway, I would give the teacher the first draft, and it would be one thing. So like the line art, there you go. And then you were supposed to remake that. Well, not remake it. You were supposed to, you know, edit it and fix it and stuff. But the way I went through mine, I had said everything I wanted to said. I had done everything I wanted to do. It was spell check, grammar check, everything. Everything was as solid as I could possibly get it. Because I would put everything into the first draft. I didn't, like, keep things out. I put all I had into it. And so when it came to the second draft, I'm like, what am I supposed to do? How am I can't add anything. I've said all I needed to. I've said all I can. All of my sources are here. I'd have to go get more, and I'd have to and then I'd have to restructure the whole thing, because one thing leads to the other, as smooth as it could be. And so I just scrapped the entire first one. I'd make something completely different. So say my first essay was on zombies. The second one would be on dragons. And it would just be completely and utterly different. I passed. Everything was fine. It was just, I bet she hated me for it, because she'd have to read something completely different. And But anyway, as I was saying, I've gotten into writing again. And whenever I try to plan for something like a chapter, for instance, it never turns out like I plan it. It never turns out as good as I plan it, I should say. Like, you have, and this is the same with art, you have this image in your head, and you want to translate it to the canvas. I can do it to an extent, but it's never as good as it's gonna be in your head. And so it ends up being frustrating. And it's the same thing if I plan something very thoroughly, say an outline, or I plan for a chapter, like a scene ahead of time. I finally get to that scene, and it turns out like absolute trash, and I'm like, well, this isn't what I had in mind. Where's this and that? And then you try to rearrange it and you try to rework it, and nothing works. So I end up having to scrap the whole thing and do it a completely different way, and then it's like, oh, you know, this one sounds a whole lot better. Yeah, because I didn't have any sort of template to follow. I wasn't going by a standard I'd already created. It was something completely new. But anyway, that's what I mean to say as I meander around again, is that I'm not good at doing those things where you plan something ahead of time and then you do that plan and it goes exactly as planned, because my plans, they never go exactly as planned. If I ever post more video game stuff you guys will end up seeing, I'll be like, oh, it'll be like this, and it'll be easy, right? No, it never is, ever. So I just don't even bother with it anymore. So when these get posted, and of course I don't know when the devs are going to stream, and when they stream I don't know what it's going to be about, so I'd end up having to write a whole script when I can, and then you have to edit the script, and you have to make sure the script is airtight, and then you have to go through and read the script, and then you have to edit the vocals of the script, and No, I'll just do it how it comes and how it bees, and it'll end up how it ends up. Like, again, these aren't supposed to be some professional, super grade quality, and they're never going to be. I work on these when I can, and I try to get them out as fast as I can, because otherwise it's going to start to stack up. Because, as you guys have seen, generally when one of them streams, 2 more show up, Hail Hydra, and then I have to go, well, this one's done, now I have to quickly do that one, and then I have to do that one, and if more streams start to show up, which has been the case, as you guys have seen, it starts to back up, and then it starts to get really, really stressful. And that's the point in which this thing that's supposed to be a hobby, this starts becoming so much more. Because again, this is more or less a hobby. Like, it gives me a little bit of money, sure. However, at the end of the day, this isn't my professional grade Times New Roman 12-point font essay sort of thing. This is some person in a basement, except for, well, I wish it were in a basement, honestly. Some person in a basement working on spare time and trying the best she can. And that's all I can ask for. Well, ish. There's corners that end up being cut, like you guys have seen when I won't move the Serrato because I'm just too tired. It's that sort of thing. Like, this isn't a job, and if I start to treat it too much like a job, well, I mean, think about it. I've been doing this for about 2 years now, and I haven't stopped during those entire 2 years. So if I take this as seriously as I take a job, I'm gonna perish sooner than I already have started to. So it's best that I try not to push it too hard. Because if I start treating this like how I treat my writing, nothing ever gets done. I'll go halfway and then I'll be like, this isn't good enough. And then I'll just stop. So even though it's not perfect, it's never gonna be perfect. It's not even near perfect. That's just how it is, unfortunately. But anyhow, that's my end rambling. I think I've done more than enough for this one. And since he had no audio, it could just be played on mute and you guys can play your own music or whatever, I don't care. That should be done. That should be it. I'm finally free from this prison for now, and we'll see if I can actually move the Serrato around this time, because dangnabbit, I commissioned that art and I want to darn well use it. The whole point of that thing being there is to move it around. I should look into other ways of doing that, but anyway. It's time. We're done for now. I'm sure there's going to be more that pop up, but at least for the time being, I'll hopefully be able to get the Senate one out before more show up. So have a great day, night, whatever the heck time it is. See you, and goodbye!
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll go find something somewhere. Joseph! We weren't making out! Don't worry about it! No, he's after me! No! I can't kite you. Oh, this is gonna suck. I'm gonna get hit again. I'm gonna get hit. No! Don't! No? Yes? Ow. Focus on decoding.